Keir Starmer's tenure as Prime Minister, as detailed in the Financial Times today, and other newspapers, partly because Keir Starmer has made this speech offering New Year's wishes and a sort of setting out his ambition, but it still paints a deeply ambivalent picture. Despite his landslide victory and lofty promises for 2025, his first few months have been characterised by missteps, muddled priorities, diminishing voter confidence, and his government's inability to articulate a coherent narrative or project competence threatens not only Labour's long-term prospects, but also the very legitimacy of the electoral process. In the middle of plummeting voter turnout among key demographics like renters and non-graduates, which effectively renders Starmer's tenure almost irrelevant. If voters continue not to turn out to a general election or indeed local elections, it's a clear signal that the politicians in Westminster or in our local council do not really have legitimacy. And we're fast approaching that point. Labour's record funding increase for the NHS, while notable, has been criticised for lacking a transformative blueprint. What do you do with that money? Hospital leaders warn that the funds merely keep the system afloat, and the ambitious 18-week treatment target risks prioritising optics over real reform, much like the previous government. On education, while increased funding and policy initiatives like ending Ofsted's reductive grading system, absurd grading system, are promising, but actually Ofsted is simply going to grade in a different way. We need to get rid of this idea that one school is better than another. If state education is going to have any future, it has to be a reliable, good education which is functioning in every single school around the country, no matter which area that school happens to be existing. That means we need to look at the French system if we're going to make it work. We need to reevaluate education. This idea of reconsidering Ofsted's role, it's promising, but deeper structural issues remain unaddressed, particularly in skills training and in teacher retention. It's no good saying, oh, we're going to raise money by attacking the private schools, and that will give us lots more teachers. It won't. It won't. Where are those teachers coming from? Who's inspired them to become teachers? How are you going to be sure that they're going to remain even once they've done their training? Starmer's pledge to build 1.5 million homes is similarly undercut by the entrenched inefficiencies of the planning system and by the fact there aren't enough builders actually to put up all those homes. His government's focus on grey belt development and bypassing councils for planning decisions risks alienating local authorities without delivering immediate results. Again, like in education, similarly in building, somebody hasn't done their homework. And in the NHS, somebody hasn't done their homework. It's all rhetoric and no reality. It's all show and no knickers. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' Rwanda deportation plan, Starmer has yet to present a credible alternative to manage record channel crossings. And more than that, in claiming that he's going to be scrapping Rwanda's deportation plan, it still remains on the statute book, along with Suella Braverman's other two absurd laws, the illegal migration law and the nationality and borders law. If those things are actually going to remain, then there's waiting for another government to come in and simply restore the Rwanda plan. Simply restore it. So what is Keir Starmer offering? He's a stopgap until somebody better comes along. That isn't leadership. That's pandering. That's providing an obstacle. That's not a milestone. That's a millstone. And Starmer is that millstone, just something in the way. Labour's failure to resonate on immigration, a Reform UK stronghold, contributes to growing disillusion. And economic growth, Starmer's pro-business overtures, which he sold the election on, were overshadowed by tax hikes in the budget, eroding goodwill destroying business at its source. A promised industrial strategy remains embryonic, while economic growth remains stagnant. A critical failure, given its centrality to Starmer's milestones. Transport, the train system. It's extraordinary that this government kowtows to the unions and then allows strikes to start in the new year with Avanti. Strikes every Sunday. What is the point of paying train workers money if they're still going to strike? If we can't have a train service that works and we can rely on? This is a priority. And it's not good enough to turn around and say, oh, this particular company, that particular company hasn't done enough negotiations. It's the government's responsibility to get our country moving and to have a transport system that is reliable. And if it's not, replace it. Starmer's polling woes, marked by plummeting Labour approval, a collapse in turnout among younger voters and renters, a widening gap in political engagement, highlight systemic vulnerabilities. The first-past-the-post system, which delivered Labour's majority, now appears increasingly undemocratic as Starmer struggles to maintain his legitimacy without broad-based support. It's particularly worrying that a party like Reform UK can have such a large number of popular votes and so few seats in the government. Reform UK's rise further underscores the fragility of this present administration, with Nigel Farage capitalising on Labour's failings to position himself as a populist alternative. This is the problem. That there isn't an alternative. There wasn't an alternative to Rishi Sunak. There wasn't an alternative to Liz Truss. What we've got is a revolving door of mediocrity. And Starmer is just another mediocre inhabitant of number 10. It doesn't matter whether he's Labour or Conservative. It doesn't matter. This is not really doing the job. Anthony Seldon, this is the ex-headmaster of Wellington College, and I remember every time I used to go there, he used to grab me and say, "Are you on the staff?" And I'd have to say again and again, "No, I'm really not." And he's written some very fine books about prime ministers, or all the recent prime ministers, and his damning criticism of Starmer suggests that Starmer's reliance on technocratic solutions and tribal blame shifting, he's written a piece for The Guardian today, masks a deeper inability to lead. He's managing, not leading. There's a difference between a manager and a leader. A leader inspires. A manager draws up little rotors. And Starmer belongs to the rotor maker, not the leader at the moment. It's a shame, because I think he had leadership qualities, as I think Rishi Sunak had leadership qualities, but they seem to be pumped out of the current prime ministers by this desire that the prime ministers read from a script of PMQs. His failure, Starmer's failure, to set a clear strategic direction encapsulated by a mishmash of missions and milestones and vague pro-growth rhetoric renders his premiership rudderless. This lack of focus, coupled with a reliance on figures like Sue Gray, who lack the requisite strategic heft, has only deepened Labour's reputational woes, and Badenoch's underwhelming PMQ's performances arguably shield Starmer from sharper Tory attacks, but do little to bolster his prime ministerial aura. And meanwhile, Farage's growing appeal reflects wider voter alienation and frustration with mainstream parties, because who are the people leading the mainstream parties? Starmer. It is not milestone here, it's millstone. Starmer is an obstacle just waiting to be removed by the next person who inhabits number 10. Whether that happens to be a Labour politician, a Conservative politician, or Farage, God help us. A millstone. a blockage, an obstacle. And you look around, who else is there? Badenoch? Oh, for goodness sake, that's a giggle. Badenoch in power. It's like being ruled by Romper Room. She doesn't do her homework. She's inspired by only one person, that's Liz Truss, who couldn't maintain office for more than a month. She likes things on one sheet of A4. She doesn't do her homework. And nor, it seems, does Starmer. Nor, it seems, does the Treasury. Otherwise there wouldn't be so many messes being made. The mess about VAT on private schools. That was already trialled in 2015 in Greece and was a failure there. So why bring it out now for some sort of ideological home goal? And, it's Starmer's rhetoric. Of course, we could always have the Lib Dem leader as Prime Minister, Ed Davey. He shouldn't even be there. He's overlooked. He shouldn't be there because of his role in the post office scandal, but he's overlooked. Because what is the alternative? Starmer, Badenoch, Farage. Starmer's rhetoric echoing Trump's populism. Farage's rhetoric echoing Trump's populism. Positions Reform UK as a formidable disruptor with significant implications for Starmer's electoral calculus. Farage is the only person waiting in the wings capable of doing something, and I'm not sure he is capable. He's capable of making a noise. If rhetoric is all we want from Westminster, Farage is waiting and ready to do it. But I think there's something behind rhetoric. It's called reality. And we haven't seen that for a very long time. This isn't about the failure of the Conservative Party or the failure of the Labour Party or the failure of Reform or the failure of the SNP or the Lib Dems. It's about the failure of Westminster. And people are recognising that in their millions and not turning up to vote. Starmer's government enters 2025 at a critical juncture. To recover, he needs to do three things. A tricolon. Three things. First, he needs to refocus on growth. He needs to elevate economic strategy to the forefront, leveraging pro-business alliances, fostering innovation in high-growth sectors. He needs to replace inefficient personnel with proven political operators, consolidate policy priorities, and abandon the tribalism that he's followed thus far in favour of inclusivity, not attacking one particular group, but embracing the nation. Secondly, he needs to engage voters. He needs to address turnout inequality through bold democratic reforms such as automatic registration, lowering the voting age, examining the future of first past the post while re-establishing Labour's relevance to disaffected groups. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, he needs to tackle the perception of politics. He needs to define a compelling narrative centred on competence and renewal, not only for himself, but for the whole of Westminster, resisting the temptation to overpromise or to scapegoat one particular group or another. He needs to be prime ministerial rather than the leader of the Labour Party. And I'm not sure he's even effective as the leader of the Labour Party. But he is certainly not manifesting projecting a prime ministerial aura. And that is the fundamental problem. If Starmer fails to pivot decisively over the next few months, his tenure risks becoming another chapter in Britain's revolving door premiership saga. And there isn't an alternative to Starmer on the Labour front benches. Wes Streeting is not sufficiently capable. Angela Rayner is, well, I know she wants the job, but she's not up to it. Both of those people, if they were pushed into number 10, would be as pathetic as the last few inhabitants. And I think Wes Streeting has serious potential. I think Hilary Benn might be a possibility. I think, oddly, it might be time for Ed Miliband or Ted Miliband. But I fear his time is gone. Public trust is eroding in political institutions, and Starmer's progress in the last 6 months has been execrable.